Suspected gunmen have now kidnapped and abducted a member of the Kaduna State House of Assembly, Suleiman Dabbo, along Kaduna Zaria Highway. The lawmaker, who represents Zaria constituency, was whisked away by the gunmen while driving in his Toyota Camry car near Farkanway village along the highway around 12:30 p.m. on Friday. What does this mean to the fight against kidnapping in the entire northwest region? With, of course, hearing terrifying tales on the highways, including that of Abuja-Kaduna. What more can be done by security forces to contain this menace? Data feeds are coming through in one place simultaneously on all our social media platforms, channelstv.com and on youtube.com/channels web. You can follow us right now on m.channelstv.com and on Facebook as well. We've got all our platforms on social media covered. Be part of the show. Tweet at Gimba Umar CTV. Use the hashtag State of the Nation. Let's get your thoughts in and be part of the conversation. Following the recent murder of Pius Abiazim, a Nigerian businessman in South Africa, 4 police officers linked to the murder have now been arrested. This was disclosed on Friday in a statement signed by the Media Assistance Nigerians in Diaspora Commission, Gabriel Odu. Now, what does this mean to Nigerians in the fight against xenophobic attacks, which seems to have continued haunting the citizens living in South Africa? Can there be a diplomatic resolution to the killings, though? Why are Nigerians and other foreigners threatened in the southern African country? It's prime time here in Lagos, and this is State of the Nation. In Nigeria and the rest of the world, I am Gimba Umar, and this is State of the Nation. It's a news that has generated so much reactions from Nigerians at home and abroad. The FBI's dramatic arrests and indictment of 80 mostly Nigerian cybercriminals in California, United States, last week made headlines globally. Closer to home, it has prompted concerns amongst Nigerians who are worried about the impact the burst will have on how the world views them and their country. Now, not to rub it in, criminality existed in popular immigration, somewhere between mildly serious and an internet joke of sorts. Now, with the FBI's arrests of an intercontinental Nigerian criminal network, which they say is responsible for millions of dollars in annual losses, something that the country and its citizens risk facing an unprecedented international backlash. Unsurprisingly, though, ease of travel is at the top of the list of concerns raised. Nigeria is one of the world's most prolific exporters of skilled migrant labor with a not too powerful passport, giving holders ready access to just 52 countries. Fresh visa restrictions are the last things educated Nigerians need. In addition to that, the reciprocity action of the US travel policy, which forced Nigerians to reduce the visa fees from $220 to $160, adds to the complexity. On trade now, this much we know. US goods and services trade with Nigeria totaled an estimated $12.1 billion in 2017. That's the latest data available showing that. Exports were $4.6 billion. Imports were $7.5 billion. The U.S. goods and services trade deficit with Nigeria was $2.9 billion in 2017. Now, Nigeria are at the receiving end in terms of battery, molestation, and xenophobic attacks in South Africa and recently in China as well. Joining me from our Abuja studios is a lawyer, Onoja Friday, Ramses, and with me in our Lagos studios is Mr. Leonard Anyogo. He's indeed from the Chatham House, London. I want to thank you, gentlemen, both for joining us on State of the Nation. But let's start with you in Abuja. Let me get your thoughts on this. Nigeria and the US obviously have very strong bilateral relations with each other, of course, looking at the adverse effects this results could cause that we saw from California. What are your thoughts? What came to your mind immediately you heard about this arrest last week? Can you hear me?
Thank you for having me.
Please go ahead.
My first thoughts about the arrest of Nigerians in the US. Can you hear me?
Please go ahead. I can hear you.
Okay, my first thought about it is it underscores what investigative capacity should be. It is clear that the Americans painstakingly went at the investigation. It must have taken quite some time, but they spared no effort in the investigation, so that at the time you make your allegations public, you have enough to go to court with, which unfortunately is not the situation we have in our country, where many times investigation comes only after arrest and seizure of properties or assets and everything like that, which is what creates so much dysfunction in the system. While waiting to appear on this program, I was saying I just saw that the Federal High Court gave an order restraining the EFCC from seizing the assets of Governor Yari. That's the point we're making, that before you make arrest or seize assets or things like that, you ought to do proper investigation to establish if there is a crime, and that what you find must be able to stand the scrutiny of the courts. It's not about media trials or harassing citizens or seizing their property or assets. It's something that should be done, and that's the lesson I take from the Americans, that before you barge into the fundamental rights of citizens or accuse them of crimes, you do a thorough investigation. Sometimes these things take time.
Now,
it's not about media
trials. If I may
trials,
jump in here, because you know as well as I do that cyber crimes, and as a matter of fact, it's called 419 here, according to the criminal codes in our country. 419, that criminal code, according to reports, are not your average, Joe you would see on the streets normally. These guys that we hear that have perpetrated this crime in the United States are well-read, very skilled, and educated. How does this position Nigerians living abroad, living in the United States, does it put them in a vulnerable position, especially those living in the US?
It is. It will, for sure. There is always a tendency to tie everybody with the same brush when crimes like this are disclosed, especially if most of the perpetrators are identified as Nigerians. So certainly, Nigerians are going to be walking around, with that sense of stigma. And yes, everybody will be considered as a criminal until you can show you are not. And many times you may not even have the opportunity to show you are different. So it is a bad thing. It will affect Nigerians, both those living there and even those of us at home, because many people have to travel. Cross-border travel and commerce is now a global thing. And so a Nigerian is always not going to be on the backbench trying to show that he's not a criminal.
Okay, let me take it away from you for a minute or two and then bring it back to Mr. Anyogo here. You're well experienced in cases like this, as a matter of fact. Having been a member of our Chatham House in London, you would have seen these kinds of cyber criminals who have, you know, hit and run, if you will, many a times and are from Nigerian origin. How will this be viewed by the international society? Is it a case, for instance, that one would say that, okay, I mean, it's been there with Nigerians, and so they're not surprised, are you?
Well, first and foremost, let me be on record that I am a very proud Nigerian. I'm proud of the passport I hold, and I think I earned that respect among the Committee of Nations globally. So it's quite unfortunate because we tend to believe that crime is just restricted to just Nigerians. And let me just quickly say so, because I'm also a very active legal practitioner, that these are just still accusations. They are still going to pass through the legal system of the United States. And of course, if there's conviction, good, if there's, based on the findings of the FBI. So let's not just condemn these unfortunate Nigerians, so to say, because they actually don't represent Nigerian, the Nigerian image. Unfortunately, very, very unfortunately, they tend to tag Nigerians as a bunch of criminals with the greatest respect. And I take very serious exception to that. And it's a way we carry ourselves, because crime is done globally. Let me tell you something. Every average black man out there in Europe or in the US or whatever is seen to be a Nigerian, which is not normally the case most times. Because you see people from other African extraction. Nigeria, of course, is the most populous country in...
you mean they claim to be Nigerians?
Yeah, they claim to be Nigerian. That's the fact.
But is that the case in this arrest?
Yeah, in this arrest, of course, it's viewed to be... they are carrying Nigerian passport and they live in the US and all that. But the point that is being made is that let us not quickly condemn them yet, because the legal system of the United States will still have to judge them guilty or not. So, but I would say that it's a very good image. It's a very bad image for us. You know, we have this orientation of wet and just wet and wet alone. You see, Nigerians are very creative, very knowledgeable people out there globally. They respect us. We're among the best in the media, among the best in the medical practice, in law, and of course international policy. And by the grace of God, I sit among the best in the world. I mean, as representative, I've been a member of the Chatham House. So we have this very image problem that we tend to even hype our negative image more than the positive aspect of Nigerians.
That's where the question lies, the image of this country. Let me bring it back to you, Mr. Onoja. This issue that we face as a country, basically driven out of jobless figures that we have, about 32% for that. Poverty rate is at above 70%, living on less than $2 a day. Infrastructure deficit is above 60%. Can there really be a deterrent from cybercrimes such as this?
Well, ideally, joblessness should not be an excuse for crime or criminality. But again, that is, I'm just picking the ideal. We know for a fact that a lot of young people have no jobs, they have no hope, they have nothing they're looking forward to. We also face the fact that even those who are very qualified are unable to get places to work. Maybe because they don't have the right connections to get in the right places where they ought to be. So, whether we like it or not, this drives up crime within the system. When people are hopeless, they have nothing else they are doing. They cannot see themselves getting married, living in good houses and having cars. You know, within the time they may have hoped when they were in school. Of course, they are open to temptation. And of course, the glitch is that the idle mind is the devil's workshop. So there is definitely a relationship between joblessness, especially the rising joblessness, the economic problems people are facing, and criminality.
Okay, we're going to go on a short break. My apologies. We'll go on a very quick short break, and when we come back, we'll try to find out which way to go looking forward. Join us again. Back to State of the Nation, we're still looking at the very contentious issues of Nigerians that were arrested for cybercrime in the United States just last week. Still have with me Mr. Leonard Ayogo here in the Lagos studios, as well as Mr. Onoja Friday, who is in our Abuja studios. But let me get your thoughts on this as well. How easy or difficult is it for us as a country to restore confidence amongst the community of nations?
Well, I think first and foremost, we must get our acts right. There's what I call government citizenship disconnect. Of course, what that means is that we have less of citizenship engagement with those in government. The government is a bit suspicious of the citizens. The citizens are even suspicious of the government. That's the true fact, because we have done this analysis and research where an average Nigerian don't even trust government. You know, he or she feels insecure of his future, and so there's that tendency of always want to cross the Atlantic Ocean.
So does the ordinary Nigerian trust the government agencies, the EFCC, for instance?
Well, I think there's a lot of work being done by the EFCC already. But basically, we must get the citizens to have the confidence in their ability of when they must go outside this country, they are going for a particular aim, not just going abroad in the hope that it's going to be better than living in this country. Let me take, for instance, we've had a lot of protests in the country, citizens being disenchanted and all that. So I have always called on this government, the Nigerian government, to create that avenue where citizens where there's an interface. You know, I tell you for good that...
Okay, how is that going to work?
No, it's going to work.
To create an interface, is that going to be like an office? Because I know
there
are interfaces that are in existence already.
Not an office at all, where citizens can add their view. Of course, I've read on social media where, for instance, let me just call this, the people of Ugoja want a state, a federal university. They have been on protests and all that. But I don't think there have been this government engagement to see why Mr. President is yet to sign the bill creating Ugoja State, for instance. So when you have those citizens that feel that they are disenchanted, there's that tendency, okay, I can't make it right in this country. Let me find the way out. Because out there, you see Nigerians that you interview. After I was in the UK last week, I had... necessarily mean because they're going out
country, then they will be engaged in cybercrime.
No, not cybercrime. Let me tell you, there are other crimes that Nigerians have been alleged to have committed or commit. But let me say something very quickly. I'm not one of those Nigerians that will condemn our brothers and sisters clearly because they have been accused of one crime or the other. I really want us to be very careful so that we look at allow the legal system to actually convict them or otherwise. Because if you see, there are other nationals that are in this country that commit crimes. But we don't highlight those.
Very true. The legal system, you've pointed that out. But clearly, this is a challenge for the judiciary, and it also borders on corruption. In cases of cybercrime and the fight against corruption, asking just off the curve. You did mention about the Governor Yari's case, but the federal courts and the AGF and the EFCC, they've been ordered not to go ahead to seize the property of the former governor of Zamfara State, Abdulaziz Yari. That case has come up in court again today. Are the courts and the EFCC in pole position to tackle financial crimes or otherwise?
Well, if I get your question clearly, my reaction will be to say that I have always advised that the proper thing should be done. And the proper thing starts with adherence to the rule of law and respect for court orders. And even more important, you cannot, for instance, take people's property or assets. I'm making reference to this particular one because, like I said, I saw it on the news just before I walked into the studio. If everything is done in accordance with due process of law, there is proper investigative capacity. I think the heat generated, I agree with Leonard when he says there is a sense of distrust between the citizens and the government. And in the context of the EFCC, that is more so because they seem to ride roughshod over people's rights in the way they go about their job. They seem more interested in media trials. They seem more interested in taking over assets without a court order.
But you are also aware, that the EFCC has carried out so many investigations and handed such cases also to the police, and it also has prosecutorial powers within the EFCC. So a lot of people may seem to disagree with you if you toe that line to say that perhaps they are going by media trials. Well,
if you look at just this morning or yesterday, I can't remember, I was going through my phone and I saw somebody called Dudafa also, 22 counts. He was charged for 22 counts and freed. You know, the court acquitted him. And the court seemed to have made a statement that the matter was not properly investigated, the proper witnesses were not called in and everything. Of course, these are the points I'm making, that if you don't do it right, you can't get the right results. And if you don't get the right results, the citizens are going to be asking questions. Now, apparently, in order to close that gap, they seem to focus more on media trial and sensationalism, or putting people under a lot of pressure before they have their day in court. So what I say is that just like the FBI, they have to develop capacity to investigate calmly under the radar without making so much of a fuss, and to respect people's rights, to obey court orders, and importantly, to stop this practice of holding people ad infinitum until you get a statement out of them. People also have a right to remain silent. Because if we do not point out these flaws, they are not likely to take dressing and do it right. And it is the not doing things right that seems to be our problem in this country, even though we know what is right.
Okay, just so that we're not subject to the point you made about the former governor now, let's move away from that. The EFCC, as you know, because you've been hampering on them, they have already started collaborating with the FBI, in this case, to arrest indicted suspects in Abuja with extradition to the US in view. Will this meet the desired result, do you think, with this kind of collaboration between the FBI and the EFCC?
Well, certainly. Like I earlier said, our image is at stake. So if our citizens are accused of wrongdoing in other crimes, and as long as there are extradition arrangements and treaties between our country and the US, the cooperation is welcome. They ought to be taken to the US to face, to face trial, to either clear their name or be punished appropriately if they are found guilty. So the collaboration is welcome.
Okay, let me take it away from you and bring it back to Lagos here with Mr. Anyogu. In finishing this discussion, I'm just thinking about the implication of this to the whole ramification and the kind of precarious position it puts our country. But do you think that data may have a cardinal role to play with effect to try to fish out who the bad guys are, the criminals, in collaboration with the FBI, just so we're able to sieve the good ones from the bad ones?
Exactly. We need to work with accurate data, because we're a country of over 200 million persons. And I can tell you for sure that out there, I'm sure it's less than 1% of that. Of course, that's still a huge number. So we are being stigmatized, stereotyped very, very harshly. Because even in the US or even in UK, there are crimes that are being committed by their citizens, even across outside the shores of these other countries or continent. So, but they tend to highlight that of Nigeria. I just told you that in some cases, you have seen where anybody who is a black man, is tend to be a Nigerian. So the situation we have or find ourselves is that they tend to highlight more of the negative aspect of some of our brothers and sisters that find themselves into crime.
So how would that stop?
No, that will stop, because that will stop if we now highlight more on the positive aspect. I just told you earlier on that there are a lot of great Nigerians in different fields, and we don't highlight that. But then, of course, if you do the crime, you should be able to do the time.
That's a good place to let it rest. I must thank you so much indeed, Mr. Leonard Anyogu. He's a member of the Chatham House in London, as well as our guest in our Abuja studios, Mr. Friday Onoja, who is also a lawyer. Many thanks indeed for talking to us on State of the Nation. And to everyone who's been part of the show, I want to thank you so much indeed for watching. I am Gimba Umar, and this is State of the Nation. Bye for now.